He wasn't a spy, he wasn't a soldier, he never set foot in the Pentagon. But from a small apartment in Bucharest, he broke into one of the most secure networks on Earth and sold its secrets to the highest bidder. This is the story of the hacker who sold the Pentagon. The story begins in 2015, deep in the neon glow of Bucharest's old town, where cobblestone alleys hid a growing army of cybercriminals. Among them was Alexei Dragan, a quiet, reclusive 27-year-old computer engineer. By day, he fixed routers and coded simple web tools for small businesses. By night, he was someone else entirely. On underground forums like Breachmarket and OD Exchange, he went by the alias Specter. Specter wasn't just another hacker. He was a prodigy, a digital ghost who moved through systems unseen. He learned his craft not from college professors, but from watching the rise of cyber legends. Kevin Mitnick, Adrian Lamo, and the British teen Gary McKinnon, who in 2002 hacked into US military computers searching for proof of UFOs. But Alexei didn't care about UFOs. He cared about money. And more than that, he cared about power. He believed that information was power and whoever controlled it could control nations. It started with a phishing email. In early 2016, a US defense contractor received a message that looked harmless, a supplier inquiry about a new data encryption module. The email contained a PDF attachment named TechSpecs216 PDF, but inside the PDF was a sophisticated zero-day exploit targeting Adobe Reader 1 that had never been seen before. That exploit was built by Specter. Once opened, it silently injected a payload into the contractor's internal network, a custom malware he named Ghostlink. Ghostlink was no ordinary virus. It didn't just steal passwords or files, it mapped the network, identifying privileged accounts, shared drives, and VPN tunnels that connected to government servers. Within weeks, Specter used Ghostlink to jump from the contractor's system into the Department of Defense's internal communication grid. He had breached a network that most hackers wouldn't even dream of touching. Specter was now inside the Pentagon's digital nervous system. He didn't move fast. He moved carefully, like a surgeon. Every keystroke, every command was executed with surgical precision. He used an air-gap breach technique, exploiting misconfigured data synchronization channels between classified and unclassified systems that allowed him to siphon off sensitive data, not top-secret war plans, but technical manuals, encryption keys, and internal security policies. To the untrained eye, it was harmless. To the right buyer, it was gold. By mid-2016, Specter had stolen over 48 gigabytes of restricted material, including details about satellite communication protocols, military drone firmware, and cyber defense architectures. He compressed it into encrypted containers, fragmented them across multiple cloud drives, and began his next move, the auction. The dark web has its own economy, one that doesn't deal in cash or gold, but in data. Specter knew that if he listed his loot publicly, he'd attract attention from law enforcement. So he went private, reaching out directly to brokers in Moscow, Tehran, and Beijing. His first buyer was a middleman known as Ragnar, a figure connected to his state-sponsored hacking collective. Ragnar paid him $1.2 million in Bitcoin for the first batch of Pentagon data. Specter had done what no one had dared to do since the early days of the Cold War. He sold America's digital secrets. But with success came arrogance. And arrogance was the one vulnerability he could never patch. When strange traffic patterns began appearing inside the Pentagon's secure network, the Defense Cybercrime Center DC3 took notice. They called in Cyber Command and FBI's Cyber Division. Together, they launched Operation Silent Fortress, an investigation to trace the breach. But tracing Specter wasn't easy. He routed his traffic through dozens of proxies, bouncing between compromised routers in Germany, Indonesia, and even NASA's old public FTP servers. The FBI analysts found fragments of his code signature, a digital fingerprint, a line of C++ common text reading, "Ghosts don't die." That single phrase became their obsession. It was a clue, a taunt, and a message from the hacker himself. Meanwhile, Alexei's world began to crumble. He lived alone in a grey apartment block overlooking Bucharest's decaying industrial sector. He rarely left home, his windows taped to block out drone signals. But paranoia set in. He started receiving encrypted messages from someone claiming to be Ragnar, demanding more data or threatening to expose him. The same buyer who paid him was now extorting him. He had crossed a line. He was no longer in control. In late 2017, Specter tried to vanish. He wiped his drives, destroyed his SIM cards, and burned his laptops in an abandoned factory. But Ghostlink had a flaw, a hidden callback he had forgotten to disable. Each time it transmitted stolen data, it logged its destination to an internal relay. That relay was still active and it contained his IP signature. When the FBI intercepted the traffic through Europol's cybercrime unit, they followed it to an apartment in Sector 5, Bucharest. At 3:47 a.m. local time, a joint Romanian-US task force kicked down his door. Alexei Drobin's Specter was arrested without resistance. On his desk, a single open text file. Information should be free, but freedom has a price. The interrogation took place at the Romanian Directorate for Investigating Organized Crime. FBI agents flew in from Washington, carrying sealed documents from the Pentagon Security Council. They wanted answers. Who did he sell the data to? What else had he taken? Was he working for a foreign state? Specter said nothing for 11 hours straight. When he finally spoke, it was chilling. You spend billions on firewalls and soldiers, but the war isn't fought on your borders anymore, it's fought in your data. You already lost. His statement sent shockwaves through the intelligence community, because deep down, they knew he was right. The breach triggered a classified review within the Pentagon. Several contractors were quietly dismissed, entire networks rebuilt, and cybersecurity policies were written. But the real damage wasn't just technical, it was psychological. Specter had exposed how fragile even the most fortified systems could be. And as US authorities tried to contain the narrative, fragments of the stolen data appeared months later on Russian dark web channels confirming their worst fears. Some of the Pentagon's internal defense documentation had been sold multiple times. In 2019, Alexei Drobin was extradited to the United States. He faced charges of unauthorized access to government systems, conspiracy to commit espionage, money laundering, violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. During his trial in Washington, D.C., prosecutors painted him as a digital mercenary, a man who sold his skills to the highest bidder, regardless of ideology. But defense lawyers argued he was a whistleblower, exposing weaknesses the government refused to acknowledge. In the end, the court sentenced him to 28 years in federal prison. He never appealed. He never spoke publicly again. Years later, cybersecurity experts would study the Ghostlink code now preserved as evidence and marvel at its elegance. One analyst described it as the most advanced modular exploit ever written by a single individual. But others saw something more terrifying. Proof that one man, with nothing but a computer and determination, could infiltrate the heart of the world's most powerful military. The Pentagon increased its cyber defense budget by over $1 billion the following year. New protocols were written, new firewalls deployed. But in dark corners of the internet, Specter's legacy lived on. Hacker groups still use fragments of his code repurposed, evolved, hidden inside new attacks. And occasionally, a new user appears on forums like O'Day Exchange, using his old tagline, "Ghosts don't die." He wasn't a soldier, he didn't carry a gun, but he waged a war in the shadows, and for a brief moment, he won. The world never truly learned how much damage he caused, or who ultimately bought the Pentagon's secrets. But one thing became clear: the next global battlefield isn't made of steel or soil, it's made of code. And somewhere out there, another ghost is already watching, waiting, and learning from his mistakes. This was the story of the hacker who sold the Pentagon.